Do you notice how you never really hear me talk about stuff that's in the news? You know, like this submarine's gone missing and everyone should talk about it. Or even like, Philip Schofield's been having sex with this guy and, or this lady's gone missing and maybe someone threw her in a river or maybe she slipped in a river or etc., 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 etc. Okay, now most of the stuff, the reason why I don't talk about stuff that's in the news and the reason why I think you should ignore stuff that's in the news is because if something's in the news, the reason it's in the news is because that is what the establishment, they want you to be thinking about, they want you to be talking about. So nothing worthwhile is really ever in the news. If there's ever something that the establishment don't want you to find out about, you're never going to find it on the news, you know? And even the channels that take, like, the right angle on it, you know what I mean? It'll be like, this is a program on the UK's truth-saying right-wing news channel, and, we look at what the newspapers are saying, and it's like, well, if you're looking at what the newspapers are saying, you're looking at what the establishment wants you to talk about, whether you're talking about it from the right side or the wrong side, And most of this stuff, I don't even believe, actually is happening. Like, oh, the Titanic submarine. It's like, not only do I not believe it's happening, I don't even care. Like, oh, this lady fell in a river. Like, is she even a real lady? But then there's not even any point, in my opinion, in trying to convince normal people who do listen to the news, there's very few of them left, but that this stuff is fake even. Because I think a lot of the times what the establishment want people like us to do is to try and go too far in popping someone's bubble. Like, for example, someone I know very well, she always watches the news, and she'll be like, oh, this Nicola, whatever her name is, it looks like she might not have fallen in the river, or it looks like, I think maybe her husband did it, or blah, blah, blah. I never ever try and say, look, I don't even believe that lady is maybe a real lady, maybe the whole thing's made up, maybe it's too much for that person to hear and understand, even if it's true. Even if the whole Titanic thing is completely made up, there never was a submarine, etc., etc., the fact that this Titanic submarine is disappearing like almost exactly a year after the last Titanic, disappeared. It seems to me, to all intents and purposes, that the original Titanic sinking was a giant sort of insurance fraud, and that whole thing is pretty much made up, like most of history. But you can't really convince, or you're not going to manage to convince normal people in a one-off conversation that most of the stuff in the news is fake or it's all made up, even though it is. Okay, but the Bible says that we have to be as shrewd as serpents and as innocent as doves. So it's like you don't have to try and explain the complete truth to everyone all the time, because the reality is so crazy that people they're just not going to believe you, or they're not ready to accept what you're saying. So I'll give you an example for how I would talk to someone about the news. So this person that I know, all she does is watch the news. She's quite old, and all she does is watch the news. And she'll come up to me, and she'll be like, oh, it looks like this Nicola blah, blah, blah lady fell in the river. And I will just say, like, why? Do you ever ask yourself, like, why do you have all this information about this lady? And how does it, why are you troubling yourself about this? Aren't you like 80 years old? Like, why are you really focusing in on whether this 40-year-old lady like fell in the river or got shoved in? It's like, how does this change your life? Or is this really a good thing for you to be thinking about and like zooming in on? Like, there's billions of people on the planet. Like, are you going to zoom in and focus on all the most terrible things that may or might not be happening to people? Or are you just going to live your life locally and hang out with your grandchildren and, oh, Putin is doing this and that, and he's moving in here. It's like, aren't you like 75 years old? Don't you like live in Surrey? Like, are you really going to spend your final years like zeroing in on Putin and this and that? Like, how does this impact your day-to-day life? Oh, these people they're in a submarine and they're 3 miles down in the Atlantic Ocean. It's like, well, how are you going to come across them then? Like, how is this going to, can you do anything about that? We got to help them. It's like, are you in any way able to help with these people 2 miles under the sea? You know what I mean? Do you know anything about that? Can you do anything about that? Do you know anything about submarines? Have you got a really long fishing pole and you're going to go down and help them? No. Why would you be focused on that? I mean, think about it. Stories like that that just go global and every news outlet in every country is talking about them. How the news is supposed to work, okay, in like normie land, the story that they tell you about the news is there's like an editor of this paper or this website, wherever, and they sit down and they decide, oh, is this newsworthy or is that newsworthy? You're telling me that every single editor of every website, newspaper, except TV channel in the whole world, all at the same time, coincidentally sat down and said, you know what? This missing submarine is the most important thing to talk about. Every newspaper, every TV channel, all across the world, all the editors decided at the exact same time, this thing that's happening 7 miles under the Atlantic Ocean or whatever, to people that nobody knows or has ever met, this is so important, and the whole world wants to know about this, and every single editor of all these publications at the same time decided that it was the most important thing to talk about? No, they get given a sheet of, right, we want everyone talking about this, and they focus your direction in that way. They're like people holding like a global spotlight, and whatever they want you to think about, they point it in that direction. And I think a lot of it is just a distraction. But I think a lot of it sometimes is more than that. It's witchcraft. It's, spell casting. That's why it's called a broadcast. It's really poisonous. This stuff that you get, that they want you to see, it's really poisonous. And often it is about people that go missing. And is this person killed? And it's all very negative. It's all death. It's all horrible stuff. It's all sort of a satanic frequency. And a lot of the stuff I doubt even takes place. A lot of it is now just sort of overtly fake. Like, these people who were supposedly killed in Nottingham, right? And they've got the parents are out there delivering a speech like about their dead children like a day after it happened, and they're saying like, listen, relax, chill out, please don't get mad if your kids are killed by illegal immigrants, because the last thing you want to do is get upset about that. It's all good, don't hold any hate in your heart. And literally such an unnatural reaction. And the mum is out there, and like, I swear to you, if you watch this speech, they've turned the comments off now because everyone was like, this seems so unnatural. She's out there like cracking jokes. Like, she had at least 4 jokes in like the first 3 minutes of the speech, and that is the last thing that you would do. Like, if your son's dead, killed, out of the blue, your son's just dead, wham, this tragedy happens to you, and first of all, you're not able to address a crowd the next day. And if you are able to address a crowd the next day, which I seriously doubt unless you're mental, the last thing you're going to do is like, you're going to open the speech with like, hey, I'm here to talk about the fact that my son died yesterday. Okay, so you guys ready? Right, so an Englishman, an Irishman, Scotsman walk in the bar, right? Like, you're not going to open with jokes. You're not going to put jokes in there, okay? It's so unnatural. It doesn't seem correct to me, but the last thing I'm going to do is try and convince people that watch the news or that are normal of that, because it's too much for them. That's part of the ruse. It's like the stuff that they're doing is so incredibly fake and so weird that regular people they're never going to be ready to accept that that's what's going on. So rather than try and convince people that, that's the case, I just keep focusing people back to, how is this going to impact your life in sort of a day-to-day way? Because stuff that will impact your life in a day-to-day way is never going to be on the news. Like, like 15-minute cities, like you're not going to be allowed to leave your house. You're not going to be allowed to go over here. They're going to start locking in your house because of climate change. Stuff like that's never really gone into in depth on the news, is it? So you're never going to really see me talk about stuff that's in the news on this channel, in any sort of let's dissect what's going on here, because frankly, on this channel, we're too smart to fall for stuff like that. I'm fine to do the occasional like fake news at 10 video, because that is sort of breaking the spell, isn't it? Of, this is actually the news. This is actually what you should talk about. So I'm fine to do stuff like that. But, on this channel, we're too busy telling you about God and about stuff that really matters to stare at the submarine that may or may not be down there. Anyway, what do you guys think? Let me know in the comments. Let me know in the chat. Thank you for supporting the channel financially. Those of you guys that do, the links are in the description to do that, and it really helps us when you do that. And we'll be back tonight with a live stream, and we'll see you there. Bye.